All right, guys, here's something people ask me all the time. How much does it really cost to live in Australia these days? Let's set it by 2025. Like, not the sugar-coated version, not the TikTok clips where someone points at floating numbers with emojis, but the real day-to-day breakdown of where your money actually goes if you're living here in 2025. Now look, I'll say right off the bat, and I think that you're already aware of this, that Australia isn't cheap, especially if you're coming from a country where rent is low, although I have no idea where that is. If you know a developed country where rent is low, drop it to the comments. Anyway, Australia is also not some unaffordable dystopia where you can't have a life. It all depends on how you live, where you live, and how good you are at stretching a dollar. Let's start with the basics, your income. If you're working full-time, the average Aussie wage these days sits around $1,500 a week. That's for someone doing ordinary 7 hours, usually Monday to Friday, no crazy overtime, just your regular working life. Now that number sounds decent on paper, but once you start subtracting rent, bills, groceries, and a few extras here and there, yeah, it thins out pretty quick. And speaking of thinning out your wallet, housing is the real heavyweight here. Rent is where most of your income will go, especially if you're living in one of the major cities. In places like Sydney or Melbourne, a simple one-bedroom apartment in a decent location will cost you somewhere between $600 to $700 a week. That's just the rent, not including electricity, internet, or anything else. If you're closer to the city or near the beach, add more. Want something newer or with a view? You can add even more. But I have no problem with renting. I've been renting my whole life, and honestly, I think, well, I'm not saying you should do what I'm doing, but I feel like I can actually save more money renting than some of my mates who have mortgages. Sure, they've got equity and all that, but they're what I call cash poor. I don't know, maybe that's a topic for another time. Now, if you're willing to move a bit further out, say a 30 to 40 minute train ride from the city, you can start to see the rent dip a bit. Maybe around $400 to $500 a week for something smaller, still comfortable, just less shiny and central. And if you're on a tight budget, shared housing is still a big thing here. There are tons of people listing spare rooms on sites like flatmates.com or even Facebook groups. Some people even share a room, with another human being for maximum savings. Not for everyone, but hey, if you're young and flexible, it's an option. Okay, let's cruise into groceries now because everyone's got to eat. This one surprises a lot of people. Australia grows a ton of fresh produce, right? So food should be cheap. Yeah, not really. The average family of 4 will easily spend around $800 a month on groceries. That's if you're cooking most of your meals, not going crazy with fancy ingredients. Just your usual veggies, meat or meat alternatives, pantry stuff, the occasional treat. If you've got a bigger family, obviously that number climbs fast. Now, if you're already living here and looking to trim that grocery bill, there are a few ways to go about it. Aldi or Costco is your best friend for cheap basics. No frills, decent quality, smaller range, but reliable prices. Then there's local farmers markets. Depending where you live, you might get better deals than the supermarkets, especially if you go near closing time, when vendors start dropping prices. Sushi shops always do this, and even bakeries end up throwing away perfectly good bread. Let's talk about the boring stuff now, and that's your utilities. That's water, gas, electricity, internet. In Australia, most of these bills are quarterly, so they only show up every 3 months, which is great until you forget they're coming, and suddenly you're staring at a $700 payment. Water is usually around $200 per quarter. Electricity can be about $300 or so, more if you run air conditioning or have a bigger household. Last summer, I ended up paying $1,000 just for running the aircon all day long. Then there's gas. If your place uses it, adds another $180 to $240, depending on usage and the season. I don't mind winter, I can just layer up. My utility bills are actually the lowest during that season. Internet is more straightforward here. Most people pay around $100 a month for decent Wi-Fi. That's for unlimited data and a bit of speed. Usually, download speed just hovers around 22, so meh. Or you could try hotspotting your phone and skip home internet altogether, but you don't really want to do that, right? I mean, sure, it works, but if you're using a lot of data, it won't be long before it starts to feel tedious and annoying. Phone plans are another area where you can overpay if you're not paying attention. I was paying around $35 a month at one point, and then my provider started bumping it up little by little, and before I knew it, I was paying $100 just for mobile data and basic calls. Switched to a smaller company, now I pay $15 a month and it works the same. Unless you're gaming on mobile data or streaming Netflix off your SIM, most basic plans will cover you just fine. Alright, now on to transport. Public transport in cities like Sydney, Melbourne, or Brisbane is decent but not world-class. If you're using buses, trains, trams, expect to spend about $45 to $50 a week, so around $200 a month. If you are driving your own car, then that's a whole other story. Fuel alone is around $100 a month on average. That's just drop off and pickup. If you drive to work, that will be more. Then you've got rego, insurance, the odd fine you forgot about, plus city parking, which honestly feels like a punishment. A lot of people are switching to public transport, cycling, or even e-scooters to avoid the cost of owning a car. Let's take a detour into healthcare for a second. Australia has Medicare, which helps a lot, but it's not entirely free. They are charging you now. I remember the days when I could just visit the GP, get cleared, and go on with my day like normal. But now, a standard GP visit might cost you around $80 to $100, and you'll usually get $30 or $40 back through a Medicare rebate. Depends on the clinic. Some GPs bulk bill, meaning you pay nothing, but they can be harder to get into and often booked out. With regard to dental, though, that's where things get expensive. A simple clean and checkup can run you $300 to $400. Braces, crowns, root canals, easily into the thousands. They say braces cost like $7,000 or something. I'm not really sure. Let's talk about school education. If you're here for study, TAFE courses run between $4,000 to $15,000 per semester. University degrees, on the other hand, you're looking at $20,000 to $50,000 per year if you're international. International students bring in big money. Local students get discounted rates, but it's still a big commitment either way. If you've got kids and you're sending them to school, even public schools come with costs. Uniforms, devices, excursions, it adds up to around $7,000 a year in many cases. Private schools expect to pay over $17,000 a year, easily. Childcare is another major one. Daycare fees, let's say the maximum, and that's like $130 per day per child. If you need 5 days a week, that's around $2,600 a month. They say it got subsidies, but still, it's a heavy hit for young families.
Now let's talk about just living, like going out, staying active, keeping your hair under control. A cheap meal out for two, around $50, no drinks. Add drinks and you're in the 70s. A nice dinner at a good restaurant could be $80 to $100 per person, easy. A basic gym membership is about $80 a month, though specialized gyms like CrossFit or rock climbing go well over $120. Want to stay fit without paying? Go for hikes, ride a bike, join a community group. Or better yet, invest in your health and buy your own weight plates from Gumtree, Cashies, or Marketplace. Just make sure to only buy from Cashies if they're 50% off, all right? There are plenty of ways to stay active for free if you're willing to look. Haircuts are also pricier than you might think. Long hair trims, around $130. Short hair, $40 to $60, depending on where you go. Suburbs are usually cheaper. And if you're on a budget for clothes and furniture, definitely check out Goodwill, Salvos, or even Marketplace. You can find legit deals if you don't mind digging a little. That's it, you guys. Living in Australia in 2025 isn't cheap, but it's not impossible. You just need to plan, be flexible, and know where the traps are. Don't panic if the numbers sound high. Your lifestyle choices have a huge impact. Some people live in beachside suburbs and eat out 5 nights a week. Others live further out, meal prep, and cycle everywhere. Same country, completely different budgets. I get what you're thinking, but that's for another video. We're not quite there yet. If you found this helpful, hit that like or subscribe button. Or don't. I'm not your boss. But I'll keep making these drive time breakdowns for anyone trying to figure out life in Australia without the hype. Thanks for riding along, and I'll see you on the next one.